part of my growth has been when I'm in these really shitty situations, I can actually see that there's something on the other side of it, that there is going to be a gift, even though I'm in the shit right now.
You're talking about our golf game yesterday?
I did win one hole. Where have you felt that in your life where you're like, this is fucking terrible. Shit's burning down all around me. And then it was like one of the best things that ever happened.
I got a horrible review in L.A. The guy that booked that room came out, saw me do 15 minutes and just smoke. And then he booked me to headline the Laugh Stop. Well, the two guys the week before me were a guy named Bobby Slayton, who's a huge club act, and Jerry Seinfeld. Then it was my 3-year-old act. So I went on stage and I thought I pulled it off. It wasn't my best, but they laughed where they were supposed to. And this review probably be the start of my career. This one girl goes, "Don't read it, Ron.
Ugh.
It's not true. It doesn't matter." I'm like, "Yeah, it matters to me." I dropped the paper a couple of times while I was reading it because I couldn't control my hands. I was
brutal.
And I also felt like I had been found out, that I was a phony. But what it taught me was that's not where I should have been. Go back to the Midwest where things really don't matter and sharpen the blade. I don't think anybody else could have done it. Could have kicked me in the ass with such an impact that it changed the direction I was going. Years later, the blue collar thing happened and I was one of the bigger comics in the country. And then when I went out to LA, it was all on my terms and I'd earned it.
I think I want to start out by thanking Tim Phelps, our beloved pro, who set us up together a couple months ago.
Tim Phelps, I was playing used to play at the Montecito Country Club out in California. And Tim was the head pro out there, but not while I was really playing there a lot. I just came back and played with a buddy of mine and he was the head pro. And he said, "Yeah, I'm moving to Texas." And I'm like, "Oh, really? Where?" Because Driftwood. I'm like, "I'm a member there, dude." How random is that?
No, you were already a member.
I was already a member. Yeah.
No shit.
So everybody was raving about the guy there, saying that he was super good head pro. So
yeah, he's been awesome. But he paired us together a couple months ago, and I mean that certainly started our relationship. And I've always loved comedy. I mean, who doesn't really love it? But I'd never experienced it in the club setting, like the Comedy Mothership, Joe's Club. And the first time I went is when you were a guest on Kill Tony. So you invited Peyton and I to go. And that was the first time she had been as well. And I fell in love with it. I loved that show. That was so cool. I went down a rabbit hole after that episode, and then came soon after to see you perform again. And then I go twice a week now, and I just can't get enough of it. So it kind of, I don't even want to say it reignited. I found this other part of comedy that I didn't really know existed or hadn't experienced, that club scene. Mm-hmm. And just fell in love with it.
Such a unique place. It's an easy place to fall in love with the way it's designed. It's a great experience just to go to a show there because of what Joe did with it. But as a comic, it's just, I feel like if it wouldn't have been for that, I would have let it all dry up because I was just sick of the road. And I really didn't want to just come back and do somebody's open mic night once a week. And I didn't think that was really enough stage time anyway to keep me sharp. And so Joe wouldn't hear any of it when I told him I was going to retire. He said, "You're not going to retire." So they had a big retirement party. He wouldn't go. He's not retiring. I'm not going to go to a retirement party. No way. We're going to build this club. He's going to fall in love with it. He's going to go out. He's going to have a blast and do what he's good at. And he was exactly right. I probably enjoy going on stage more now than I have in, 30 years. And just the hang of the green room and the tribal aspect of the comics that are hanging out up there, and which is a pretty restricted group, that not just anybody goes in that green room. But you have an opportunity as a comic to do 4 sets a night if you want to, and that's a unique position to be in, and you can really keep your skills really, really sharp. It's like working out, and I know that in that with Kill Tony and what Joe's really promoting up there, which is the growth of young comics, and that's where you'll find a great club, one that really cultivates that open mic night. And they're able to do it with Kill Tony, where they're able to, if somebody has a good set, they can award them another set, right away. In any of the venues in town that they mess with. So, it's such an amazing opportunity. I mean, if I was a young comic or an old comic giving advice, I would say move to Austin because the stage time is here. Joe, unlike the people in New York or LA, actually pays money to the comics that they can live off of. So you can come here as a comic and not leave town and make money, a good living. I mean, these kids are just bouncing all over town. There's 7 or 8 clubs and they're all doing stand up. So
what's it like so what are they being paid? Or are they not being paid in these other places to go up on stage?
Well, when I was doing shows at the Comedy Store they paid me $30 a set. But at my regular shows, I was making $75,000. So $30 is less, But and I also it was kind of an insult, so I never picked up a check. So they have a stack of checks this big with my name on them, and I just wouldn't go get them. And I told them we'll save it up till we can throw a party for somebody. But now everybody's moved here. The checks are still out in LA, so I'm going to move them down here and throw the party here in town. Yes. So, but it really is for me. It was the most perfect thing to happen because I always knew I'd end up in Austin. And then when I found out that Joe was thinking about it, he only thought about it for about 20 minutes before he did it, which is kind of how he is. He's pretty impetuous when he decides he wants to do something. He just moves right on ahead and does it. Next thing you know, he's down here, and he and I had gotten close. It was kind of weird because I have a really good friend, Jay McGraw, who's Dr. Phil's son. And he and I have been really close for years. And and Joe's daughter and his daughter went to the same school, so their wives became friends. But both of those guys are kind of hard to get to know, but both great guys. So they were both asking me about the other one. And both of them really good friends of mine. I'm like, yeah, give him a chance. He's a good guy, And next thing you know, they're in Cabo. I'm getting pictures with them without shirts on. I'm like, what's going on here? What happened to my buddies? All of a sudden, they're traveling without me. So I'm careful now, just how much I'll endorse a friendship before I get robbed. So, but it's kind of cool that they ended up being such good friends, and but why not?
Well, I've heard Joe multiple times on his podcast, whether you've been the guest or somebody else, credit you. He and Tony both credit you with bringing both of them here.
I think I made it a little more inviting because I knew about Austin because I've been coming here since I was 15. And my best friend's brother taught economics at UT and lived in a house on 4th Street. Those were just low-end houses, that whole area. And I would tell my parents we were going camping at Lake Sutherland, and which I still don't know where that is. We've never been there once, and we'd go straight. And his brother would let us stay in his yard. He wouldn't even let us in the house. But we had camping equipment, so we'd set it up and then walk 2 blocks of 6th Street. And there's the biggest circus we've ever seen, and it was early 70s. People were tripping hard, just unicycles and juggling and music pouring out of every venue. And even then people were going, it's over. You missed it. It's nothing like it used to be. And I'm like, looks pretty good to me, man. I don't know if you've ever been to Deer Park, but we don't have one of these things, not one of them, not one aspect of it. And so it's kind of funny to me that after all these years, people are still saying that. Or, yeah, it's not what it used to be. I'm like, when did you get here? Thursday? Really? It's taking a hit since Thursday? But I still, in No Town, that is cool will remain the same, because if it seems cool to you, it's going to seem cool to somebody else. And but that growth is what we end up with the mothership, and which will thrive in this environment. So it's really a jewel of a thing to have in my life. Just like the club and the camaraderie.
Well, yeah, you and I have talked about that quite a bit, and just what it feels like to have a tribe like that. And it's something we talked about a few minutes ago about how I've been really intentional about creating a tribe and creating a space where men can get together and share. Maybe it's some deep shit, maybe it's just having some laughs, maybe it's watching a game, playing ping pong, whatever, but just to be in the space of other men where the guards are down and you can just show up. And I think like whenever you've talked about what you get, I mean, technically it could be on a nightly basis, but you're down at the club 3-4 nights a week and you get to just drop into that. Like, what's that been like for you? Because there was a period of time, I'm sure you didn't have that. And then to drop into that, like, holy shit.
Well, I've also kind of embraced my position of elder statesman. And so I know the young comics want to hear what I've got to say, and they, or maybe they don't. Maybe that's my head, but they seem to, and that's okay with me. I don't mind being a leader in this group of people, that are we're all trying to do the same thing. We're trying to grow as artists, and it doesn't matter what level you're at. You still want to see growth, more than anything else. And so it's a cool thing. They had to kill Tony the other night, and back when they had all the people in the alley that are waiting. So there's 150 people out there, and I was walking up there, and I had all these people back there clogging the alleyway, and I was kind of in a grumpy mood, and I was like, and then one of them says, "Make way for the king." And they all parted and started clapping. I've been back every Monday since.
Just to walk through the alley. Just to get back in your car and go home.
Yeah. Hey, where's that "make way for the king" guy? Yeah, do your line, dude. Do your line. So now they had to move it out of the alley. So it's
not in the alley anymore.
No, they had to move them into a club. The city of Austin said, "No, we can't have people hanging out in the alleys." I'm like, "Oh, that must be new." Because there were people hanging out in the alleys always.
Yes.
And, but anyway, that club is just special to me, and I embrace my position in it, and and it's the place I've got to have. I just it's so perfect, and I feel like I can really keep my chops sharp without going on the road, and that is just amazing. And I really didn't feel that way as much. I mean, I went to the Comedy Store all the time. But I really didn't love the crowds there all the time, and you really had to work, and you were also following some really strong comics. I mean, Ali Wong and Sebastian Maniscalco and all those guys every night. And it seemed like everybody was gunning for everybody. And it seems like here everybody's pulling for everybody. And so there's no petty anything going on. And I try to, encourage the guys that I think are good, and girls, and because I know that strokes from somebody higher up the ladder matter to you, and it really can make you, I remember some really kind things other people said about me when I was, a young comic, and how much it meant to me to just be encouraged, a little bit to keep going. If they suck, I ignore them.
Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't see where you would, you'd lean into them too hard there. Well, let's talk about your retirement. I've had plenty of friends that have played professional sports and just had conversations with them about what it feels like to come to what for them, it's, it's over. For you, it's more of a decision. For me, I was a trader. After 18 years, I stepped away. I could technically go back to that, right? I'm not interested in it, but and so the athlete's a little bit different because they're not welcome anymore. They don't have the skills. But for you, like, what was that process of coming to the realization that I'm done?
I did it for 37 years at just an intense level, just because I always thought it would. I never really believed in it, and I always thought I would be found out or it would come to an end, and which it inevitably always does. And but this just kept going and going and going, and 23 years in theaters, uh, and but I was just so tired of it, and just tired from just all the travel, and I was still doing 110 cities a year, but at the peak I was doing 145, and that's 4 and 5 cities a week, with a couple weeks off a year, and to get all those cities in, and I just kept doing it because I kept thinking it would come to an end, that something would happen, and then nothing did, and I was like, somebody's got to put a stop to this, so it's going to be me. So
Yeah.
and I just decided, I mean, what am I doing it for now? I don't need the money. The fans have been really, really good to me that way, and so am I just out there chasing money I don't need? I didn't understand for a while why I was still doing it, and the show still worked, and but the travel was starting to beat me up, and really, I was just tired of it. I was tired of the whole process of it, and so I decided, well, that's it. You can't keep doing this if you feel that way about it, and why do it? And then it turned out it was just all the travel. The stand up I missed immediately. You know the the but it's also easy to let something dry up too, because it's nice to stay home.
Yeah.
But so if it would have just been a mediocre option besides, instead of the mothership, I probably wouldn't have done it. And the mothership's kind of what drew me in, and it's so much fun doing shows there that Joe hired me to be the first headliner, which I was never going to even do that again. I was just going to do 15-minute sets. That's it. So this went up to a 40-minute set, and it was fun as it could be. And then I got some really big offers for New Year's, and I decided to take them. So that'll mean I had a year off, and then I decided, well, if I'm going to get the show in good enough shape to go out and do an hour for those shows, I might as well do a month. So now I gave my managers and agents the month of January to do whatever they wanted, and they've already come back and said, well, we got one on February 2nd. And I'm like, nope, January. That's it. And so I'm going to work for a month and see how I feel about it. But now, you can stay sharp anyway. So, you can be pretty, it won't take that much to get me ready to go if I decide to do more shows. And I don't really expect that I will. I think I'll do those shows and do that traveling and go, I can just do this at home.
Yeah, because it is just so fulfilling, just going down to the club and just doing your sets and being with the crew, and just from as an audience member, the energy of the club it's amazing. I mean, it's all. I mean, and I'd love for you to speak about this, but what it's like. You were talking about LA, is the crowds are a little different. It feels like here, for me, it's like just so fun to be in the club, and then the comics come out, and then inevitably they've been killing since, so many of the shows I've gone to, these 15-minute sets, and I've seen multiple comedians 4, 5, 6 times. And it's really cool to witness how the bits change and shift and what gets dropped and what gets added. It's such a cool process. And I'd love to get into that at some point, like what that's like.
Well, the venue matters in stand-up comedy or anything, right? So I like to play the Fox in Atlanta, 4,500 seat, ornate, beautiful thing, because going to the Fox is an experience in and of itself. So if you can tack a really good show on top of that as a reason to go to the Fox, the building itself sells tickets, right? Just because it's such a cool thing to do. Just go to the Fox and see the show. And I feel like the Mothership kind of does that too. It's a fun place to go. It's also a hard ticket to get, so people appreciate it when they've got it. And and we do have Joe is definitely the leader of the gang there, which is great. And so he kind of polices who can come into that green room, even if you graduate to the green room, which isn't even really a term yet, but it will become one.
Yep.
Because it's not big enough for everybody that does stand up to go hang out in there. And we want it to be us, the exchange of ideas. I was talking to Theo Vaughn last night about how he should be brought on stage, as opposed to the way he's doing it. And I'm right, 100% right, which he knew as soon as I told him what he was doing wrong. And but you can let those ideas float around, and you don't have to wait and learn it on your own in 15 years. Somebody can pass that information on to you. But Joe's built, what I consider the best comedy club ever built, and he listened to everybody while he was building it, and but it was his dream, and the beautiful thing is that 80% of the door goes to the comedians.
Wow.
He doesn't carry. I mean, he pays for his overhead off the cocktails but he wants it to be a place, where comics can go and make some bucks while they're learning the craft. And he did it. But the space itself is worth the ticket. And then you add good comics on top of that. It makes a fun night. So.
Well, one of the concepts I love, and I believe it came from the Comedy Store, but all the door men and women that work there are aspiring comics. And so it's got this energy of, and I'll be at a show and one of them will come up and open the show. And it's like so cool. And then as I walk out, they're getting my phone out of the bag.
Right. Yeah. That's just, they just nurture that kind of stuff, and, I don't know how that started at the Comedy Store, where the door guys, that's where Tony came from. He was a door guy, and but that's how they do it, and I think it's very cool. Now you can really watch those guys grow, because that you'll see a lot of change in a comic that's only been doing it for a few months, and the answer to all questions stand-up comedy is stage time. That's the answer. Get on stage every single time you can get on stage. Put a microphone in your hand. It doesn't matter what the circumstances. Give it a try. Give it a try. Give it a try. So, so these kids are getting more stage time than anybody. And if they were in LA, they'd have one spot a week at 1:30 in the morning in front of 12 people and just go up there and eat it. That's hard to do, and to be driven to go ahead and do it enough. It's really just not a great place for young comics to be, in my opinion. So I never stayed out there. I went out there after I'd already become a big draw, and I did it for a reason. Now somebody like me can go there and get all the stage time they want.
Yeah.
So because you could do 3 shows a night at the Comedy Store, and then you could bounce around at the Laugh Factory, which I never really liked, and the Improv, which I liked less. But you could bounce around and get some sets in, but they're all paid $30. So it's
and then down by the Mothership, how many clubs are within walking distance? I mean, I'm hearing, I hear stories of, someone who's working, they're going to bust over to Vulcan and do a quick set and come back, and just to be able to do that, holy shit.
Yeah. There's Creek in the Caves right around the corner. The Vulcan's still doing stand-up. Sunset's doing stand-up. East Austin Comedy Club. Cap City up north. The Green Room's still right across the street. It's been there. I used to play that room when I was a young comic. And it's still there. So it's and then besides that, there are little open mic nights all over the place now that are springing up, because there are still guys that can't get on every stage. Yeah. So they'll go invent it themselves, which is smart.
Yeah.
And I used to go, when I first started, I'd go to restaurants, like in a hotel, and I would set up an open mic night or a comedy competition. And first place would be dinner for 2 at the restaurant. And then I would only invite comics that I was better than. And I would eat the dinner. and I needed the dinner. That was a big deal, $40 worth of food or whatever it was. So I did that all the time. But I knew there were two guys that would get the food. I didn't let them know. So sometimes you have to be self-serving, I guess. But that was one of the ways I got to be a good host. And also I realized that most of the guys that were the opening act weren't good hosts. They didn't memorize the announcements. They didn't do it slick. They only cared about the time they did doing stand-up, which almost didn't matter compared to hosting the show, which was your real job. That's what you're called. And so I thought, well, I'll just be a really good host. I'll memorize everything. I'll make it sound slick. I'll make it sound like show business. And then the show will go off without a hitch. And whether I'm the funniest guy doing that spot or not, I'm going to be the best at that. And so as a result, I got a lot of stage time. I was, there were 4 clubs in Dallas. And so, I'd do all of them once a week, or once a month. So I was working every night and just from paying attention, to what the job really entailed.
That's such a great idea, concept too, because that is part of your stage time. It's not your, and you can obviously mix in your personal brand and your comedy as you're making these, what could be mundane announcements that others are kind of treating as such, but you're connecting with the crowd. And so you use it as a way to like buy them into like, I'm a guy that you're going to like.
And the other guys are, pulling a piece of wadded up paper out of their pocket.
Yeah.
All right, next week, Henry Cho. But I make it sound like you don't need a piece of paper in your pocket to know who Henry Cho is.
Yeah.
But you do.
Yeah.
I can make Henry Cho sound like a bigger deal than he is. And they'll love Henry Cho.
Yeah. So I'd love to just break down, within the club, you've got you got Fat Man and Little Boy, the 2 rooms. It's like, let's call it 250 in one, 120 in the other. And then you've got theaters, you've got arenas, you've got fucking hotels. Like, what's the difference in stepping on these different stages? And why is it important?
Well, because in stand-up comedy, you're going to be put in different environments all the time. So it's better if you're not tuned into one thing that makes you think that that's correct, right? So all these rooms are different, and they're all the way from the Creek and the Cave is really a dump, but it's got a good stage. Doesn't matter. You got to get used to the sound. I haven't been to the Vulcan since Joe opened his club. In fact, I haven't done a set anywhere else, and my tendency is not to. That if they want to see me, they got to come to the Joe's Club. Because I can do all the sets I need there, and it's really convenient, and I love it. So
you've got the hang. It's all your boys and girls. Like, it's just such a vibe. So it's like, why? Why would you?
Right. So I don't need to go chase anything, So and people say, you're just being loyal to Joe, and I'm like, well, maybe, but it's also myself, it's just, I don't know if I want to do all of them. And one day I might decide I want to go do all of them. But for right now, I only do that room.
And it's it's like people will project their shit onto you, but it's like, what do you want? It's like, I want to go where I know it's a 10 out of 10. The hang is amazing. It's not in these weird kind of like around other people that you don't maybe know, that, which is, I'm sure you're fine with, but like when you know that you go down there, this is a known entity. I'm going to go into this green room and immediately drop into just I don't even know how to describe it, just an energy where you're just so you. Like, why would you do anything else at this stage in the game?
Well, at this point, I've just chosen not to. So it's also easier not to.
Yeah.
I don't have to think about it. And, they try to get me to go to the new club around the corner all the time. And everybody goes over there and does sets. And I'm like, well, I asked them, I said, do you sell my tequila? And they go, well, I'm like, let me know when you get that on the shelf.
Yeah, perfect. And, right?
Right. So, because that's how club owners are. They care about themselves, and if they know that there's something that you got going on, they don't care about that. So Well, those club owners knew I had owned a tequila company. It's the best tequila in the land, and they should sell it. But it's easier not to. It's easier. People don't ask for it. They always ask for Patron and.
Of course, they ask for those ones. And if they did ask for yours, they're not going to necessarily hear about it. The bartender, unless a lot of people are asking about it.
So anyway, right. And so right now, just for now, I'm just doing all of my sets at Joe's place.
How different is it to go from just those two rooms, from the, fat man and little boy? Like when you're doing your set?
I really like them both. And, other than this, there's less people, but it's also a smaller room. So it sounds balanced, but it is a little different experience for the comic, but it's a good mix up.
Stage is smaller.
It's it all feels a little different. So it's good to be used to both of them, and now I don't even have a preference.
Yeah. I'm still bummed I haven't seen you in the little room yet. I've been over there a handful of times now, and I think I told you I saw Andrew Dice Clay in the little room, and that was amazing. But you're right there. You're really right there with the comic. Right. It's special.
Yeah, no, I like them both, and to be able to just pop in and out of both of them all night is just,
Yeah.
glorious.
So walk us through a night where you're gonna do 4 sets. You roll into the club. I think the first shows usually start at 7 and 1 and 7:30, and then 10 and 10:30. Right.
Right. Well, I come in with no plan. I'll tell Joe that I'm coming in, and so he'll make sure I've got spots in the big room, and then I can always walk on the little room anytime I want. And I like to go on late in the first show, early in the second show, so I can get home to my girlfriend, and she comes with me to some of the shows, and she loves Kill Tony, so I take her out to Kill Tony a lot. But for the most part, I like that hang by myself, and which is like, it can be a point of contention with us, but that's always been my thing, and she knows it and she respects it. And but if there's a really good comic, Dave Attell, I took her out to that show, and but anyway. I forgot what we were talking about when we were talking about.
Yeah, just I forgot too, because I was thinking about Jeannie. I love Kill Tony too. Like I'm such a huge fan of that show. It's been so fun. I've been fortunate enough through because Gel Blasters is one of their sponsors, and Colin, who started the company, is a good friend, and I was was actually technically the first investor, but have been able to go to the show because of that. Otherwise, you can't get in. I mean, they're sold out as soon as they go on sale.
Right.
But it's so cool. And if anyone, we'll link to Ron's latest appearance on Kill Tony in the show notes for just watch it, and watch it on YouTube. Like, it's important to actually see what's happening. I mean, you still enjoy it if you listen to it on just the audio, but it is such a cool experience.
Well, they have video of it too, right?
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just it's different when you see the comics and you see everyone. Yeah, it's.
Yeah, Tony and I got to be friends, drinking at the bar and and at the Comedy Store, and I liked him so much that I had never seen him do stand up. I just you just hang out at the bar, and then I got to where I was kind of afraid to watch him do stand up, because if he sucked, I wouldn't like him.
I bet.
And so I really avoided him. And then I found out how funny he was. I was like, I don't know what I was worried about. He's doing this all good rooms, does a lot of sets, so sure he's good. And then to see him grow over the years into what he is today, which is just a monster, and the show's doing so well. I can't believe that this is their 10th anniversary, and this week at ACL Live, and that sold out in just a couple of minutes. So.
Yeah. Are you guys going to go to that?
Absolutely.
Okay. We're going to be there too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so I'm real excited for him. I'm really, I just love it when friends do well, and then he's going to do well. I guess that's a big announcement he can make. There's another big thing coming up with him too. So
perfect.
So we're all excited for him. He's really good, and he's becoming a huge draw. And they really tried to cancel him, but it didn't work very well, and it was just complete bullshit anyway. And But we got an environment now we can thrive in, that they have phones locked up. So you can't take things we say out of context.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because that is I got to see. I mean, as an audience member, what I've told people when I go to a show, I feel like it's comedy from years ago. And it was like comedy because this is what comedy is. And you aren't getting snippets of things where someone sounds ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, the stand-up comedy is best when you find the line and just step over it. And but now everybody that's offended by that step screams like little bitches, and I guess they want, when the club first opened, I was going through TikTok, which I do way too much. And there's a girl that was on there that was kind of a center, right-wing center girl that talked politics. And I would just watch her things when I flipped through there. And then Mothership comes. Then she goes, the Mothership opened, which is an anti-woke comedy club. And then she started going through the people. And she said Ron White was there. He sucks. And anytime Ron White goes on stage, you'll never hear anything he hadn't just said on television 1 million times. And I was like, all right, you can think I suck if you want to. But the other part means you didn't go to that show because I didn't do one word that's ever been published, and I never do.
Yeah.
And but I guess what they want is for us to get all these jokes pre-approved by them so they can tell us. And boy, wouldn't that just be the death of comedy? So you have to fight that at all levels. You got to be able to say there is no subject matter that a great writer can't tackle. Now, if you're not a great writer, you should stay away from it.
Yes.
Right? But if you're good enough, you can talk about 9/11. You can talk about transgenders if you're a good enough writer. And now a lot of those subjects I don't get into anyway, and I don't get into politics because I don't want to be divisive. And I know my crowd, and I know how dead split they are.
Yep.
And so let's just do something else. But I just want to make them laugh, right, and have a good time, so they'll come back again someday. But yeah, we've created an environment there that we're free to do whatever we want. And I mean, even Roseanne comes up there, and Roseanne will go QAnon on you, and nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
We don't care. Now, there are going to be people in the audience that are like, I can't believe she said that. But fuck them,
Yeah.
Fuck them if they can't take a joke.
Yeah.
It's a joke.
Well, it's interesting, too, because through watching Kill Tony, you'll see many of the, aspiring comics attempt to go into those areas. And to your point, it's like when they're not a great writer and can't deliver it, it sounds terrible.
Right.
But I'll find myself oftentimes like laughing and then just imagine if there was a camera on me, the shit I'm laughing at right now. And it's just like a little thing, it pings me and it's like, that's why we're here. So we can just laugh about all this shit because everything is ridiculous. This world is ridiculous. Like, look at us. How did we even get here?
I don't know.
And let's just enjoy the fucking ride.
And get some laughs, you know. And it does feel glorious to laugh, It
does.
It just feels glorious. And I think you get karma points for making people laugh. And I think that's how my life got to where it is today. That making people, taking the time out of your day to make people laugh or make people smile, I think is good. And I think you get rewarded for it.
One of the things I have noticed about you, whether it's at the golf course or out, when you're very good actually about approaching someone and just asking how they're doing and in a very genuine way where, I mean, again, we've all been around people who are famous and I don't blame anybody for anything. Like you don't have your privacy or whatever, but you've always been really open and generous and shown a lot of grace for people. And I think I just love the way you show up. I think it's really cool. I'm
pretty grateful, for what it all, my retirement plan was maybe something neat will happen. That was the whole plan. And so I really don't feel like a big celebrity anyway. And I know people fuss over me some, and
they sure do.
And that's fine. And that'll go away on its own. One day nobody will care about it. And so, right now, I really just socially, I play golf where I play golf. And I don't see myself above or below anybody at the golf course. And, it's just people that we all ended up in the same place, exact same place at the exact same time. So find out what about those people. No, I don't believe in coincidences, right? I believe things happen and people walk into your life. So you should keep open to that, and be inquisitive. And, also you can find out real quick if you don't like somebody and you want to steer it another way.
I will call you out on one thing. You don't always treat people like you're even. There are times after I've handed you $20 or $30 where you make me feel like I'm maybe a peg or two below you. You want to speak to that?
Well, you are on those days. Those are what you call your bad days. My bad days were in Eastlake. So,
oh boy, we don't need
worst
to do
takedown I've ever taken. And but they put us together. We played golf one time. Found out we're really compatible. We live near each other. We play golf at the same place, and we like we have matching habits.
We sure do,
right? And so why not? And if you keep your eyes open to those kinds of experiences, you run into some really cool people. And I've found that to be true throughout my life.
Yeah, I agree for sure. I'd love to know, how did you get started? I mean, everybody, we all have people who are funny, and there are times where I think I'm pretty funny, but I've never considered this path, right, in my entire life. And so what was it about you? Obviously you have that gift, but how did it become like an actual path for you?
I'll tell you the short version of it.
Give me one of these. Take the headphones off, and you're getting a little bit of, your hair is all standing up. Oh. I know you want that beautiful mane fucking knocking off. It got a little fussy on you.
Oh, I thought I had it.
Just give me this one. Just slide it on like that, like you're putting in. What do those girls put in the? Oh yeah, yeah, like a big. You're perfect now.
Okay.
No, you just fucked it up again.
All right. Maybe I should have a mirror.
There you go. Now don't touch it.
Okay, very good. What were we talking about?
How did you start?
Oh, I'll give you my uncle, Dr. Charles Pollard, was a Baptist preacher, and I loved to go to church when I was young, and but more than anything else, I loved my Uncle Charlie, and he was funny and a really, really good pace, rhythm, and timing speaker, and so I sat in that church and learned a craft just watching him work. And he was so good at it. He still does it to this day. In Farmington, Mexico, he has a church on an Indian reservation that like 20 people go to. He's there every Sunday. His daughter plays piano and sings, and nobody pays him to do it. And he just does it anyway because he believes that's the way he believes.
It's kind of like you going down to the mothership. You just go in there doing your sets.
There's a lot of parallels between me and Uncle Charlie. And, and then I ended up with a really bad drug problem when I was young. And I got probated to a drug abuse program that I went to work for as a counselor after I'd been sober for a couple of years. And then I became their primary public speaker because what we found out about was I was really good at telling my story. And so they would take me to schools and they would bring in, 300 kids. I'd talk to them about it, and then they bring in 300 more. And I'd seen other people do it, but I was clear that I was real good at this, that I could make them think, and I could make them laugh, and I could make them whatever. And so I did that and never had any aspirations of being a comedian, but I was a big fan and I had a lot of albums and stuff from Cosby and all the greats. And so that was in my early 20s. And then when I was 28, somebody built a comedy club between where I lived and where I worked. So they put the sign up early. It was Funny Bone Comedy Club in Arlington. And then the guy I worked with, a guy named Sam Bartholomew, went to the first open mic night, and he came back into the office the next day and said, "Ron, you're funnier than these guys. You should go down there and do this." And I'm like, "Really? You think so?" He goes, "I hear it every day. I hear it every day." and so I wrote 4 minutes of rip snorting.
How
comedy.
hard was that to write those first 4 minutes?
It was.
Or did you not know any better, so you just wrote the 4 minutes?
I just wrote the 4 minutes. I think I got, a couple of laughs. I had one pretty good joke.
Do you remember it?
Yeah, but it's been hacked so many times, it wouldn't even sound. It was an original idea 37 years ago.
Well, give it a shot.
Oh, my wife said, "Did these pants make me look big?" And I'm like, "No, I'm pretty sure it's that fat ass." So that was and I went on stage. I got there early and practiced. It
still
my
slaps.
Set. I got there early so I could go up and do my thing with a microphone without a crowd there. And when I did that, when the waitress laughed, and I'm like, "Oh, I got one. I got to laugh." That was my big stronghold. And I weighed probably about 260 pounds then. And one line was, I talked to somebody in the audience, a girl, and says, "You ever had that 'I want a fat man' look in your eye?" She goes, "No." "You got it now." And then I'd sing to her. It was stupid, but it worked.
Yeah.
And anything that got a laugh, I would consider great. You know? And so that was at that little club, and then I figured out how to make get spots at the other clubs, and then I moved up really quick. I mean, I got good at it real fast, and probably too fast. And then I got to where I was middling on the road. I opened a show for Sam Kinison. And at the Dallas County Convention Theater, and I'd only been doing stand-up about 2 years, and this was a remake show for Sam, and his brother Bill was there. Sam wasn't there when I got there, and wasn't there when I got off stage, and it was a remake.
What's that mean?
He'd already canceled it once, and they rescheduled.
Gotcha.
I guess would be a better way to say it, but Bill told me, he said, "Ron, sometimes," and I just found out the day I was doing it, because there's a guy named Carl LeBove that did all of his stuff, went to rehab or whatever it was. And I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. I got this. And he said, sometimes they'll just scream at you because they want to hear him scream.
Oh, gosh.
And I'm like, okay, well, it didn't work out that way. It worked out. I murdered 2,000 people, and I never played more than 300.
How long was your set?
About 15 is all I had.
Yeah.
And you could see Bill walking, looking over on the stage, going, "God dang, it's killing it." So anyway, I come off stage, and it's just me and Alex Ramundo, my buddy, and my wife, Lori, Marshall's mother. And we're sitting back there, and then all of a sudden, Sam's entourage shows up. So there's 15 people backstage. And he sends his bodyguard to get me. Now, that stage has been empty for 20 minutes. And he sends his bodyguard to get me and takes me up, and he's got a hooker and a big old vial of Coke. He's banging on the table, trying to get a big rock stuck out of it, and he's just working on it. And he looks up and he goes, "Heard you killed him, cowboy." And I said, "Yeah, it's a good crowd. Sam, you're going to have a good time." I didn't know what to say to him.
Yeah, what do you say to him?
And he looked at me and he goes, "How about a cup of coffee?" And I'm like, yeah, I'll do a bump with
cup of coffee.
So he gives me a little line. He makes a big old nasty looking marley thing that he snorts up. And then out of the kindness of his heart, he faked a heart attack, and nobody believed it but me, because everybody had seen it. And I thought he was dying. And he's really spitting. It looked real. And I was about to put my mouth on his mouth. And he goes, gotcha. And hopped up and went on stage. Watch this. Goes out, just annihilates this crowd, at the peak of his powers.
Wow.
And, well, afterward, there were people there from the Funny Bone who owned 21 clubs. And there were people there from the Laugh Stop who owned 6 clubs at the time. And they got together and they said, well, first of all, they said after the show, Kinnison's like, I got a limo and some strippers. We're going to go to some titty bars, snort some cocaine. And then I got the club owners going, well, we'd like to have dinner with you after the show tonight and talk about your career. I'm like, I'm going to go with Sam. And this will all be here tomorrow, right? Yeah, I'm going to sneak off with Sam to the debauchery factory, find out what the next 16 years of my life is going to be like. And so that's what they did. They offered me, 40, all the work that I want as a middle act, making $500 a week. And that's how it started. And within like another year, I was headlining, B rooms and occasionally an A room that I shouldn't have been in. And but for the most part, I did 9 shows a week. So so I was working a lot, and nothing will make you better than practice.
I do, before I want to get to how you got to Blue Collar Comedy Tour and how that whole worked. But isn't it interesting? You pointed out like this thing all started because you had a drug problem as a kid.
It is, and in essence,
when you think about like all the reps you got going to these different places to share your story, which you knew really well, but could really deliver it. And it just like,
yeah, I really even surprised myself. But to go back further, I was able to deliver it because of Charles Pollard, because I already knew how to be a public speaker because I'd watched it done so many times. And that I was good at it. I just picked it up, from sitting in the pew watching my uncle jam.
That's so cool.
And and then to have that experience, that it really was, all that stuff counts,
Yeah.
And even though, the stage time was a little more nerve wracking, but it was something I was pretty comfortable with.
Yeah.
Especially compared to the people that were throwing up in the parking lot, before they called their name, it didn't have that effect on me.
Yeah.
And, but the shows, people come to comedy clubs to laugh anyway. So if you give them any reason to, they'll do it.
Yeah, they're trying.
Yeah.
And so I think I was telling you, I went and saw Louis C.K. when he was in town last year. And whoever opened for him, bro, I'm like, I really try to laugh. I just want the comic to feel good, and I couldn't laugh. It was very dark, but it was like the to your point, like in my opinion, she didn't know how to write the jokes where that shit was funny. It was just dark and dark and dark, and I was like, bro, come on. And I don't remember who she is, but it was just curious how she ended up.
How was Lewis?
Killed.
Yeah, right. I saw him too. I saw him at the Creek in the Cave a little, just a few months ago. I think it was before he did those bigger shows, but I went back and talked to him afterwards, and I was like, man, I forgot how funny you are, dude. It was so well written and delivered, and he's something else.
Yeah, he's been one of my favorites for a while. How did you get to Blue Comedy?
Well, because I was the opening act, that you'd work with every headliner that came through town, and New Year's, I think the first year I was doing stand-up, Foxworthy and a guy named Vic Henley, who's passed, came to town. And he and I were just kindred spirits. We both played golf. We both did the same thing for a living. He was really good. And so that was kind of always there, and the friendship was. And then when he got big enough to take somebody with him, he took me with him. Everybody always thought it would be Vic because they were really close, and they had some kind of a falling out I never understood, and so those dates just went to me, when Jeff was, private jet, and when his thing came out. So that was great, and he was just ridiculously generous with me, and encouraging, and believed the story, and gave me that opportunity. And so I did it for a couple of years, and then he had to bring somebody else in because he wanted somebody that could help him write, and I couldn't write for him. And so that guy did it for a while, and then he brought me back on, and then the Kings of Comedy went out with Cedric and those guys, and we're doing huge numbers with 4 comics, and so we were on the plane on the way back home, and Jeff told me, because Bill Engvall had a tour with him and another guy, and said, we're going to put these two tours together and put it on the road, and I remember my comment was, that's retarded. What a visionary I am. Yeah. You don't need 4 comedians in a show. Yeah. That's weird. So I didn't know about what kind of numbers they were doing down there. And
sure.
And then somebody came up with the name Blue Collar because we didn't want a redneck. We just really wanted working class, folks who comes to our shows, and then we didn't know how successful it would be, and it would have been nothing without Jeff because he was the catalyst for the whole thing, and turned out it was, people just loved it, and when Warner Brothers made the movie, I was like, wow, I have a chance of getting famous off of 10 minutes of material, which means I've got this whole block of material that is polished for 15 years. Ready to go. And most people burn that whole thing getting famous with a big special. Oh. Well, I was on Blue Collar 1 for 10 minutes, and then I did that tater salad story at the end. And that is a perfect storm because they don't know what's coming.
Yeah.
And which is my full-blown show that's completely mature and banging. And now it was a lot bluer then, because I always worked clean when I worked with Jeff.
Okay.
So whenever they moved over to me, they got a way bluer show, and a lot of people didn't like it, but more people did. And so even though I got complaints, and what about the family environment? And, we'd tried to warn them with ratings that it's not exactly the same thing, but, still works. And so I was able to stay in, theaters for, 24 years. I put it up just against anybody. It's hard to do that. Hard to get up there and stay there for a long, long, long time.
I'm curious about just like coming up with a bit. Like, do you sit down? Do you have a process where you sit down and you're kind of writing about like just the seed of it? Or is it in an interaction where something happens and you're like, that there may be something there, I'm going to work on that?
Well, I think one thing that's different about me than most comics is that in the 37 years that I've done stand-up comedy, I don't have one piece of paper with one word on it. Not one. Now, there may be a set list at the house somewhere with 30 words on it, if I could find it.
But you don't write.
I don't write. I don't write it down. I don't write it. It's a brain defect.
Yeah.
That if I put that stuff in front of me, I cannot think. And it's really weird. I do have a ridiculously bad attention deficit disorder, and that I treat when I'm in the mood, and but I couldn't do conventional schoolwork either. But this one thing that's impossible to do, I seem to be able to do with ease. And, but, I just, most guys at my stage, they'll have volumes and volumes of notebooks and all this stuff.
Your writing process is not a writing process then?
No, I think it's something funny. And I've always, put myself into a position where I could just go try it. And that's, why I've always been at the store, or doing multiple sets a night. I mean, I'm always on stage. So, and then I record everything. I rarely go back and watch it, but I record almost everything I do. And the only time I really go back and watch it is when I've been off stage for a while and I'm about to go back on, a tour or whatever. And so I'll go back and watch some of it. But, and I know that I've missed a million jokes that way. And but it doesn't matter. When your brain works like mine, you have to forgive yourself and take what it gives you and not beat yourself up for what, your shortcomings are. So, but not one piece of paper, not one notebook.
So when you go up, do a 15-minute set, right? Tonight, maybe you go out, you do 4 15-minute sets. Do you have an idea of what the order of it's going to be? Do you have, how does that work out?
Well, right this minute, I've got a 15-minute set that I like, that's got a bunch of callbacks, and it's just a fun little 15-minute set for me to do. So that's pretty polished.
Yeah.
Now I'll bring new ideas into that, and but for now, and then I'll reinvent it because I've got about an hour floating around that's not published, and so this is just kind of my favorite 15 or that 15-minute segment of that hour. So I can do another segment of it. But right now, I know I'm going to go open for Theo Von tonight, 15 minutes. So I'm just going to go do that set, which will hammer and give it to Theo. So, it's that part of it is just kind of ready to go. But I know the way. I'm really good at knowing what order those jokes work the best in, and finding the order, finding the place for it, just for ultimate, just for the most pop, just how to put sets together. I've always been good at that.
Do you have any longer sets? I mean, when I went and saw you when you headlined at the Mothership, you obviously had a longer set. Do you have any coming up that you're doing, or are you still just gonna?
Not until Christmas.
Okay.
I may start doing. I mean, they didn't do a second show last night, so in the big room because Joe didn't want to. I don't know. I don't even know why, but they didn't. And
did they sell tickets to that show?
Yeah, they did. And
oh fuck,
I don't know what happened.
It's such a hard ticket to get to. It's such a bummer,
right? And so Christina P came in and did the early show, and then there wasn't a late show. And I was talking to Tony later, and he said, "Yeah, it's my birthday, and I just really didn't want to do a show, and so Joe just didn't have one." I'm like, he could have called me, but I know he wouldn't, because it's kind of a big ask for me to come in and headline that room and also Christina P. The only reason I did her show is I showed up, and she said, I thought about calling you, but I'm like, I didn't think you'd want to be on my little show. And I'm like, who am I to call Ron White? And I'm like, don't look at it that way. I'm just a comic here in town that can, if you need my help, call me up. I'll come down here and do it. And so I may do a few of those, just Ron White and Friends, where I may do a 25-minute set or a 30-minute set at the end of it. But, right now I really like to have my freedom and not plan those things, because I like to let my days evolve, and also Joe's very generous with all the comics, but I won't take any money from Joe because he gives me so much without, I could never repay the debt, and I have no intention. But I really, I love Joe so much, but I won't take money from him, because he's given me something that I need. And, and he puts me on that gigantic podcast if I need to, he just, I feel like we're good, and now if he uses my name to sell tickets, then I take that money. Sure. So, but But to do the day-to-day stuff, that's free.
Yeah. I wonder, you just shared that, Christina P. didn't quite feel like reaching out, didn't feel comfortable. You're like, come on, I'm here. Like, how much of that do you think was that kind of generosity was, I guess, influenced by, Jeff Foxworthy? You said how generous he was.
I guess I could have learned some of it from Jeff or probably Uncle Charlie, or, I just grew up in an environment that I remember whenever we got the first copy of Blue Collar from Warner Brothers, it went to Jeff's house, because it was his show. And so he called me and he goes, I got it over here. Come get it. And then you could tell like he almost didn't want to give it to me, and that he was worried. And he gave us some thought, and he goes, this is going to make you rich and famous. Be nice to everybody. And I was like, fuck you. Give me the tape. I want to see this fucking. So, Jeff has always been led by example, of just how polite. He's just polite. He's polite. He's kind to everybody. Now, I probably have a different vision of myself than other comics have of me, because in my vision of me is not that big a deal. And sometimes they have it in their head that I'm a big deal because I've done these theaters for all these years and have a name, but that doesn't mean anything to me. Not much.
Yeah.
I would rather, I would, I don't know what I would trade it for, but it's nice that I'm held in some sort of esteem by the young comics, and that I'm respected by my peers. That matters more to me than anything else. That when Chappelle comes to town, he calls, and Rock is always saying ridiculously nice things about me and very high profile things. And Rogan, Jesus,
he can't stop talking about you.
He just love fest
cool
because he stole my boyfriend.
He did.
Yeah.
We were talking about this before we get on the podcast, but I'd love to just hear about, in fact, let me just preface this by, Ron was he's not really familiar with the podcast, so he was asking me, tell me a little bit about it. And one of the things I shared is part of my growth has been when I'm in these really shitty situations where I feel like someone's fucking me or there's something going on, that I can actually see that there's something on the other side of it, that there is going to be a gift, even though I'm in the shit right now. And so the sooner...
You're talking about our golf game yesterday?
I did win one hole. Granted, we only played like 14, but... So what was, where have you felt that in your life where you're like, this is fucking terrible, like shit's burning down all around me, I got fucked in this relationship, whatever, and then it was like one of the best things that ever happened. It just released you from whatever this idea was that you thought was so important?
Well, I got a horrible review in LA really early on, and it was a brutal thing. And it was in the Orange County edition of the LA Times, written by a guy named Duncan Strauss. And the guy that booked that room, it was a Laugh Stop. There used to be one here. And they owned 4 or 5 of them. And he came out, saw me do 15 minutes and just smoke. And then he booked me to headline the Laugh Stop. Well, the 2 guys the week before me were a guy named Bobby Slayton, who's a huge club act, and Jerry Seinfeld before Seinfeld. And but it was a really prominent stand-up comic. So then it was my 3-year-old act. So I went down there and I was really nervous, and because I hadn't performed within 1,500 miles of there, and I saw who was, the headliner, the guys I really admired a lot. And I'm like, I'm not near that good. which I wasn't. And then one of the waitresses pointed out, said, that guy right there, that's Duncan Strauss. He's here to review your show for the Los Angeles Times. And I'm like, oh, that doesn't help the way I feel at all. And so I went on stage and I thought I pulled it off, it wasn't my best, but they laughed where they were supposed to. And, pretty good. I thought he'll want to talk to me after the set. I come off stage. He's not there. And the next night, they had this kind of an open mic night. So there's amateur comics that went on before me, and I killed. I mean, the best set I'd ever had. I'm giving advice. I'm thinking about divorcing my wife and hooking up with the girl in the Tecate beer poster. I mean, that one set really changed who I thought I was. And then the review came out the next day. And I had gotten so drunk that night that I literally, I could follow a trail of popcorn. Apparently I'd gotten some popcorn somewhere, and I woke up with popcorn, and I have popcorn out the door, popcorn on the elevator, popcorn. And I went down and I got to read this set. I mean, this review probably be the start of my career, but really good. And, but they were sold out. So the club was only 2 blocks away. And so I walked down there, but I'd been down there before. So I kind of met the people that worked there, and I walked in and this one girl goes, don't read it, Ron.
Ugh.
It's not true. It's a hatchet job. He does it to other people. Just don't read it. And I'm like, what? Just review. Just don't read it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm like, yeah, that matters to me. Let me read it. So I got the big picture of me making a face I swear I've never made. But the camera don't lie, In block print above that, even when white's not blue, he's not funny. And it starts off, watching White's 41-minute show. He pointed out that I didn't even get to the 45 minutes that I'm supposed to get to.
Oh.
Was like it was watching White's 41-minute show was like watching a polar bear lumber around on stage, something comical or interesting happening only occasionally. And I was like, oh my God. I dropped the paper a couple times while I was reading it because I couldn't control my hands. I was
brutal.
And I also felt like I had been found out,
Yep.
That I was a phony. And this is the roller coaster, because the night before I was the king of the world. And so I went across the street and I bought a bottle of tequila and a pack of razor blades and went back to my hotel, which was the Marriott Suites Hotel on the Bay. At the time, the nicest hotel I'd ever stayed in.
Mm-hmm.
I mailed the razor blades to the guy that wrote the review with a note that said, just in case you're ever in the mood.
Oh, shit.
And then I sat there and I had a bunch of weed and sat there and just read it. That's why I can still quote it 35 years later or whatever, 34. And just sat there and drank until I was passed out with my own drool on my own bad review, with a joint in my hand. And so now it's Friday, right? So I got 2 shows to do, but I think in my mind that those shows are canceled because they read that review and nobody came and it's canceled. And I'm like, well, I've done 3 shows. So surely they have to pay me for those so I can have enough money to get back home. Well, turns out the girl in the office was right. It doesn't matter what this guy says. Nobody gives a shit. It's wrapped around a bass and it's in the freezer. And there's comedy clubs sold out every night. Doesn't matter who's fucking there. And but now I have had no sleep and I'm waking up from a drunken stupor, unshaved. And I show up and they're like, Ron, you have a show. You have 2 shows. Fucking parking lots packed. I'm like, So then I kind of validated the bad review by going up and doing some really bad sets and just hammered drunk. And then the guy that booked me called the club and he said, I just want to see how I read that, that was brutal. I just want to see how Ron's handling it. And they're like, oh, he's not. He's not handling it at all. He's drinking like a fish. He's, I don't even know if he'll be awake for the next show. And, so then the Saturday came and the sets were a little better and Sunday set was pretty good. But what it taught me was that that's not where I should have been. And that the answer to the question is go back to the Midwest where things really don't matter and sharpen the blade for what it turned out was another 14 years or 11 years, I guess.
Wow.
And the guy, I saw him at one of Kathleen Madigan's shows one time and he came up to me and apologized to me. And I was like, no, you told me the truth when I needed to hear the truth. And I'll be grateful for the guy for the rest of my life because I don't think anybody else could have done it. Could have kicked me in the ass with such an impact that it changed the direction I was going and made me back up and think. I mean, even though I on some level knew I shouldn't have been there.
Sure.
I was booked, so I had to go. I was contractually obligated to do these shows, but I just went out and did what I considered the smart thing to do, which is to go out to the Midwest where all the stage time is, get out of LA. There's nothing there for me. And they always say LA will come knocking when you get ready. So that's what I did. And then, years later, the blue collar thing happened and I was one of the bigger comics in the country. And so I would, then when I went out to LA, it was all on my terms. So whatever show I wanted, and I'd earned it, for sure and deserved it. So, but boy, when success comes a little too early, it's
yeah, and you're not ready for it. That's painful though. I mean, that's a painful, because it feels very personal, even though it wasn't, right? He was arguably, he's talking about your comedy and it
was pretty personal. I thought it was pretty personal.
Sure.
But it's just things that are disguised, something that looks really bad is really, really good, and that one was hard to see and it did hurt. I mean, it really hurt. And, I was just glad I didn't call my wife and divorced her because when I got the bad review, I was in love with her again. That's how love works.
Yes. Where like today, like the young comics coming up, like where are they kind of missing out? Like everybody has their own path, but I feel like comedy, I'm sure with social media and everything has just changed what it means to be what that path looks like for a comic. Where are they missing it right now?
I don't know that they are missing it. That it's a different world. I mean, I know that it's, if you go out there and win a contest and all of a sudden you're famous, but you haven't done all the groundwork for it. I know that's a disaster that you'll, never ever.
You mean like last comic standing or one of those?
Whatever, or get famous on TikTok or whatever and have people think that there's something substantial there that you can tour with when there is not. Then that's a dead end street and that's your problem. And usually those guys will start stealing material because they don't have the show. I mean, they have the opportunity to be a big deal, but they're not a big deal. They didn't do the work. They got there somehow. There are shortcuts now but shortcut to where? That's the question. And so there are a lot of ways to get famous now, and I don't begrudge anybody for using any of those things. And they weren't available when I did stand up, so I had to go through the natural progression of time and waiting for opportunities and but there was no of course no TikTok and even the social media that was there. I didn't know how to really operate it, so. And then I did Twitter for a while and I had a bunch of followers, but I always let the comments affect me too much. And then I got to where I just put it all down completely. But now it's almost impossible for somebody that doesn't know me to say something shitty to me. And the only way they could possibly do it is to get a porn star to write it on her ass. There's a chance I might watch that porno movie, and he goes, Ron White sucks. So you got me. You got me right there.
Yeah. Busted. It's so interesting, this idea of stealing jokes. I imagine you steal a joke once, and is that, can you come back from that, or do you get one kind of pass? And I guess it's all context for who the person is and what they've done.
Yeah, you can steal without knowing you're stealing for sure. Because if I go back and listen to my first special, it's amazing how much I sound like Foxworthy. In delivery and all that. And I would have denied that.
Probably different, right? You're trying to you emulating people that you're.
Yeah, but it's another way of stealing someone's persona.
Yeah.
And
it becomes a little more subjective, though, I guess.
Right. Yeah. So, you now if you're just stealing jokes, you're a piece of shit, because you're doing that. And so there's no cure for it. And except for you deserve to die slow, painful death. Rogan was, of course, the king of that when he threw down with whatever that Carlos Mencia. And, I'm sure Carlos wished he could have hit Joe in the mouth, but he knew what would happen if he did. And that just kind of takes it out of the equation, right? Joe's a safe zone. There's going to be no fight, as what would happen. So, that's something we kind of police ourselves with, keep an eye on it. But yeah, it just hold a gun to my head and steal from my family. I went into a club one time in Tampa, Florida, and there was a guy on stage on open mic night that I just worked with. And apparently he recorded a bit. Because he did it so well, and it was an unstealable piece about Cincinnati chili, and he did it well. And afterwards, I grabbed him by the collar and drug him outside, threw him up against the wall, and made a bunch of promises to him. And I doubt he, who knows if he did it again, but there's just no room for it.
No. Yeah, I'm trying to think within the trading world. I mean, there's integrity, and then there's, there are guys who do shitty stuff, but I feel like that stealing of a joke thing is so clear.
Yeah.
And it's very, intentional.
And some people feel like they're entitled to anything that someone says in conversation. If I say something, even in a group thought, I say it, I might be thinking about taking that to the stage. So just because I say it and you hear me say it, doesn't mean you can take it to the stage. It's just a conversation.
Damn.
So it gets kind of tricky,
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's it doesn't come up that often.
How hard was it being on the road so much? I know Marshall, your son, traveled with you a lot. What was it like? I imagine, again, pro athletes are on the road, but they come home. You're on the road.
Yeah. Well, I had joint custody of Marshall. So when he was 2.5 years old, he was on the road with me as a baby in a diaper.
That's so cool.
And I would hand him to a waitress at night and go, just hold him for about 45 minutes. I'll be right back down. He doesn't smell that good. There's diapers in that bag. And so he and I, that's our journey, the good or bad, whatever, it's what we did. And until he was, old enough to go into kindergarten, then he couldn't do it anymore. But
sure.
So then when he got older, now he's a big, hairy kid. So when he got older, he worked for me for a while. And
he did.
Yeah. And so he did my VIP stuff on the bus. So I would have my best friend, who was my road manager, Steve Cook, who's dead now, Alex Raimundo. I don't think you've met Alex, have you? He was the bartender in the club I started at. And he and I have done a gillion shows together. We also own the tequila company, Number One Tequila. And so I had three of my favorite people, and then Pat driving the bus, and so it was a glorious time for me just to have those people together to go through this experience with me. So you really want to share that stuff with people you care about as much as you can. So I was able to do that, and for a long time.
How long has Marshall lived in Austin?
I don't know, 10 years, maybe.
So he was here before you guys moved here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you guys play golf every week. I've gotten to play with you guys a bunch. He's awesome.
Yeah,
He has so much fun out there.
I'm so proud of him. He's just such a good human being.
He's just such a great attitude.
Yeah, I love him to death. So, and then we're also getting to interact with Mima now. My mother, moved here, so which is a part of my life, because I've always been the funding partner. In her life, but her life's always been in Florida. So I moved her here. And now I'm the point man and the funding partner. And I'm like, wow, this is way more than I thought it would be.
Oh, yeah.
With doctors and pills. And I'm like, oh, no, what the?
Falling down. I mean, there's been a couple times we've played and you're like, I got to roll. I got to go take care of my mom.
She hit the dirt.
Yeah.
And she's doing better. She's getting stronger. She's got a new knee. I'm so, I'm thrilled that she's here. I mean, I just love it. So her niece, who she raised, her granddaughter, came in last week, and her daughter's here. My sister's here this week, and so it's kind of a new adventure to just have all the unlimited access to my mom, which is great,
Yeah.
And Marshall too. It's really the first time he's been around her a ton, because he was always off with his mother. They lived in North Carolina for years and Phoenix for years, and they've always lived around. But so it's we're all getting a big dose of mothers, which is great.
Good, great. Tell me about number one tequila.
Well, Alex Raimundo again. He was born in Acapulco, Mexico, and so he's an immigrant, and a great guy, just somebody I've had so much fun with over the years, and had always been a tequila drinker. And he just had found this tequila. A buddy of his is in the spirits business in Mexico. And then I went down there, and then the guy said, don't forget to go to the Rebecca's distillery. It's a shithole, and nobody goes there, but they're great people, and they make the best tequila around. They're craftsmen, and they've been farmers for 140 years, and they built this distillery 70 years ago. And it's like, it was a shithole. It was like a nearly dead dogs laying around, and fat people in dirty shirts, and the glasses were filthy, and but the tequila was so perfect. And so they didn't have a presence in the U.S., and so after much consideration and years of talking to them about letting us bring it, because they wanted no part of us bringing it, because they sell it for 5 times what I sell it for in ports in Mexico, and it wins awards there. And there's another 500 tequilas you've never heard of in Mexico, and this is just one of those badass little small batch distilleries that we were able to negotiate with and get the rights to distribute it in the United States. So, and it's doing well. It's never been over budgeted, that's for sure. So it's always been pretty slow growth, but steady. And, I hired a CEO that I could not afford, but could not afford not to have him. And he was the answer to all our problems, complicated or not complicated. Got him Rich Espy. He ran the biggest liquor house in Nevada and championed us there. And so that's it. We sell great tequila. It's rare. Most people don't even know where to get it. And but you can go to taterstequila.com, and I can send it to your house.
Hell yeah!
So give it a try. You'll fall in love with it. It's great.
Tate, we'll link to that in the show notes. Well, I don't know, man. Feels like a wrap.
Hey, what a great place, man.
Yeah, it's great having you.
Thanks for your friendship too, man. I'm really enjoying each other. I liked yesterday the best, but you had your moments in East Lake.
Yes, I did. Yeah, no, man, I appreciate you. It's been really fun to get to know you, play golf, hang out, just do life,
Absolutely. And we live near each other too.
Yeah. So how about that?
Works out great. Well, thanks to your audience for listening for a little while. And thank you for working the buttons and stuff.
Yeah. Thanks, Linz, for doing the first part of the tour as well.